Hi, everyone. And Roberto, my apologies for the technical issues we were having. So thank you for your patience. Tonight, we welcome our good friend, Professor Roberto Flores Arzu from Guatemala. And we very much appreciate that he is willing to stay up late to talk to us, being 2 hours later. His talk is entitled The Diversity and Distribution of the Genus Boletus, sensu stricto, in the American continent. Roberto's training is diverse. He teaches mycology and bioethics at the School of Biological Chemistry in Guatemala City. His interest in using mushrooms as a food alternative goes back to the early 1980s and helped lead him into mycology. He and a team of colleagues have conducted several studies of the edible mushrooms of Guatemala and documented over 100 species that are eaten by the local indigenous people of Mayan descent. While wild mushrooms are readily available in the markets of Western and Central Guatemala, it's interesting to note that people of the Eastern region are somewhat mycophobic, kind of like the English. Roberto is particularly proud of his porcini lasagna recipe. Maybe he'll share. So please welcome Roberto. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. I just want to know if you can see the presentation.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect, because I see Dogo. Okay. Well, good evening to everyone that is attending this presentation. For me, it's a real pleasure to share the experience obtained during these 30 years when I began to study the porcini in Guatemala and tasted their delicious flavor. Later, when I was doing my Ph.D. and in Spain, and since then, when I started to study the local diversity at microscopical and molecular level, I really appreciate the interest of the Mycological Society of San Francisco in my work. That is becoming, my work is wider and interesting because there are good friends that are contributing with their knowledge, experience, and vision. And I also want to thank Mike, really, because of the invitation and kindness, to Enrique Sanchez for helping us with translation, and Maria Fan for invaluable work for making it more easy, And my greetings to all of you from here. Now it's cold, also cold. And I want to say my greetings to my dear friends, John and Tori Garroni, that I don't know if they are here or there or listen to me. Without any further, I hope that this talk will be enjoyable for all of you and allow us to obtain constructive observations. The title of my presentation is Diversity and Distribution of the Genus Boletus sensu stricto in America. And vamos a ver, I hope this go. My presentation is really heavy. I hope that it could go fine. Otherwise, I will try this. Okay. Once upon a time, as in the tales, in which our planet was quite different and all the current continents were united in a supercontinent called Pangaea, during that time, a diversity of fungi emerged. But when the continents drift apart, some genera were dispersed and suffered the effects of geological phenomena and climate changes, facts that influenced the disappearance of some species and the emergence of others. Certainly, it happened in a very long time. About 50 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, the vast ancient continent of North America underwent enormous changes, including being divided into two subcontinents that we can see in that drawing, Laramidia and Appalachia. These led to genera like Boletus or Lactarius becoming isolated again. And due to the natural selection and pressure, some species persisted and dispersed, resulting in lineages with unique features. Others remained restrained or disappeared, and others could remain and adapt to new environments with help of good genetical changes. In the Cretaceous, oh, I'm sorry, something is happening there. Oh my God. Okay. The southernmost, I will try to get this. I don't know what is happening. Okay. In the southernmost territories of the North American continent were the Maya block, is this small portion that you see here. Were the Maya block that contained the Yucatan Peninsula and a considerable portion of the current Guatemala territory. And next to it, the Chortí blocks that changed its original position until it joined the Mayan block in the northeast, forming the Sierra de las Minas in Guatemala and creating a natural barrier with different geological composition, forming, for example, this is how it was changing, and the Chortí blocks joined the Maya block and formed the Sierra de las Minas in Guatemala. But this pressure allowed the formation of precious minerals as jade, the green jade that was famous and used by Olmecs and Mayas.
Roberto,
Yep.
could I interrupt you? Right now, you're not in the slideshow, which is probably why your animations are not working.
Yes, I don't know what is happening.
If you go into do the presentation as a slideshow, right now we're just looking at the slides as you made them.
Let me, if you can say it again, I will try to fix it. Okay,
So
you said to share share again?
Maybe so in English it'd be under view, and then you go to slideshow.
Wait, no, I don't see that. In more,
Maybe Vista?
okay, maybe more share sound, no.
So Vista up near the top there.
Yeah, pero es que I don't have Vista here.
It's up, I can see it. It's up at the Ayuda Vista. It's up near the
No,
second
I
row.
don't have it. I don't have it. Control remote, annotate, AI, companion, summary, new share, chat, participant, stop video, mute. That's what I have.
Oh, you up at the top of your screen. Yeah, keep going. Yep. So bring your cursor to the left. See your cursor there?
Wait.
Now your cursor's at the bottom. Bring your cursor back to the top.
Okay, maybe down.
There you go. There you go. That should be.
Okay. Right. Oh, but what is happening? Okay. Okay, go. Okay. There is. Finally. So there is the origin of Guatemala and Central America. Okay. Oh, I apologize for this. Okay. That story that I mentioned, the Maya. And okay, but talking about the current times, it's important to recognize the effort of brave people that worked hard, trying to give us a clue of those old processes and recognizes some genera and fungal species. In the process of identification, American and European scientists made brilliant contributions to the Boletales, such as Schweinitz, Peck, Frost, Alexander Smith, Harry Tyers, Ernest Both, Rolf Singer, Gary Linkhoff, our well-known David Aurora, Roy Halling, Divesets, Greg Bonito, Beatriz Ortiz Santana, Noah Siegel that is following us, Michael Kuhl, Michael Wood, and Daniel Winkler. And especially the last three persons that I mentioned, I appreciate them for their understanding work with the pictures and clue that they are doing. And in the new American generations, with molecular and evolutionary taxonomy, we recognize Brent Entinger and Keaton Tremble, with whom we have two projects on the identification of Guatemalan bolids, including those of Sierra de las Minas. In this simple map, there are some North American Boletus species. It's interesting to note how the East Coast species tend to have beige or reddish cap, while in the West Coast, there are more species with dark and red caps, with the exception of Boletus barrosi. According to the molecular studies by Dentinger et al., and following the bolide filter, there are at least 15 species in the US, and it's expected to increase the number in the coming years if there is more research. That's obviously, if there is no research, it will stop. It's important to recognize that North America is a hotspot for the diversification of bolids, being California particularly rich. Actually, we recognize the importance of molecular biology in resolving some problems with similar species, but also for the unexpected results and relationships that we can find. One of the more disillusionment findings is to realize that one precious sample corresponds to another in herbarium samples, especially when we are using types, typus or holotype samples. And for that reason, it's necessary to analyze samples microscopically, macro and microscopically, and genetically, plus their habitat. Here, we have a collage of different samples collected in the US, in the Western US, identified as Boletus edulis. However, some may belong to other species, such as this one, that resembles Boletus fibrillosus, and a macroscopic feature that can cause confusion was that one with yellow color in the context that grows in California. This feature was also found in Guatemala with porcini that grows under Guatemalan fir. When we analyzed the sequences of both procedences, we found that they are the same species. So that yellow color is maybe produced by the roots, the elements, the substance that are produced in the roots and are absorbed by the mushrooms. And here we have two big guys, Carl Haney and one amazing 8-pound edulis found in Washington in 2018. And I can say that you, American, and the people that live in the West Coast of the US, you are very lucky because you have giant porcini. And this is not, and they don't grow everywhere. It only happens in the Nordics and Baltic countries, as in Russia and with you. Okay, now let's see to the North American bolids. Boletus rexberis continue be an endemic species. It's a beautiful representative of California in the Rocky Mountains. However, it could be mistaken with Boletus pinophilus due to its reddish cap and the type color, but we have to remember that Pinophilus is an European species. Boletus regineus, another beauty mushroom with a dark and irregular surface cap, is easier to recognize, especially in its habitat. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, the habitat. However, it can be confused with Fibrillosus because of the darker color. An astonishing West Coast species is Boletus fibrillosus. There is no other species with that surface, so dark, so fibrillous, and also at the stem. Boletus nobilissimus is receiving more attention now due to its phylogenetic relationship. Nobilissimus has a wider distribution in North America and possibly extending to Mesoamerica, where characteristics like its pitted cap may be less pronounced. It's important to remember that environment can influence and favor certain traits as a response to genetics. Boletus barusi, the only whitish American Boletus sensu stricto, but in Europe and Africa, there is a similar species, the Boletus mamorensis, but it was transferred to Boletus edulis recently. But if you go to the stores of Westphal fungi in the right season, you can find delicious and pictorial fruit bodies. Boletus bariipes bar fagicula is one of my favorite species because it is easy to identify because of its color. If you can see the dark and velvety cap, it is commonly very dark, even black in young fruit bodies. But when it got more mature, it began to be more clear, as in these pictures. But the stem is always brown with white or beige reticulum. Depending of the region, it can turn purple on the stem or on the cap. And the flavor can be good. I don't know, maybe in the US, the flavors tend to be a little mild, but in our latitudes, boletes tend to be more delicious. The flavors are stronger than in the US. I don't know why. Maybe the terrain, the soil, who knows, no? We have to know more about that. Okay. The next one. Sorry. And that mushroom that is with the sign, it was identified in the internet as Fagicula, but it is not. It is a different, and I am sure that it could be a different species. But when I was looking for pictures and information to prepare this presentation, I found these pictures, and they were identified as edulis. But when I started to look with more attention, I realized that they are not edulis, but they are more similar and related to Boletus bariipes bar fagicula. And I also have to say that Boletus bariipes bar fagicula needs to be changed and be renamed because it is a different species. It's quite different genetically from Boletus bariipes. So, I think that, and I hope that this year we could have a paper with the separation of these two different species. Okay, moving to the East Coast, We frequently find Boletus species with beige or pale brown caps. A good example is the common Boletus variipes. However, many herbarium samples identified as variipes align more closely with Boletus leptocephalus, an older name that possibly will arrive again from the tomb. So I am pretty sure that next year we will use leptocephalus again. Boletus nobilis. This tiny Boletus is a delicate species with a distinguishable, it is distinguishable by its whitish stem and fine reticulation. This species might also extend its range to Mesoamerican, and it is related to other species that we have found in Central America. Boletus atkinsoni, another eastern species, has a beige to pale brown cap with pale stem and white reticulation, as we can see in the pictures. And it can be confused with variipes and with nobilis in the US. And something similar happened to us in the South, also in Mexico and in Guatemala. This species, atkinsoni, also seems to be related genetically with other found in Central America. And that extraordinary species, Boletus sucerulescens, it changes from bluish to brown at the iminium when it is manipulated, as is shown in the pictures. And I think that this species share more similarities with certain Mesoamerican species that we are going to see later. You also have Boletus pseudopinophilus. That is an exceptionally beautiful species that could be mistaken also with Boletus sucerulescens, but it doesn't exhibit the blue staining. And depending on its habitat, the cap color can range from nearly purplish to orange with a well-developed reticulum and with a mild to good flavor. The species grow in sandy soils and is typically found in association with pines, not with oaks. And the last, the elusive and mysterious Boletus motiae is akin to the mythical Nessie, at least for me, because it is hidden and with few reports. When I was looking for pictures in the internet, I could realize that there were very few pictures of that species. I think that maybe they are not to avoid confusion to the public. But in our molecular analysis, we have observed that motiae is close to a Guatemalan Boletus affinpinophilus, a species that we have called Boletus neopinophilus many years ago. And I think that it is also present in Mexico. This is a route of the possible and funny ways that the North American mushrooms follow it to Mexico and Central America. Okay, now we go to Mexico and we can see that they have at least 15 species too, but many of them have not been confirmed yet. And there are many species that have been misidentified with Boletus quercophilus, because quercophilus is a neotropical species. But I think, and I am sure, that most of the Mexican and some, especially at the north, are from the US origin, especially the Edulis and other. Mhm. Okay. An honor to whom honor deserves. I want to mention the main Mexican boletologist after the brilliant work did by Dr. Gaston Guzman. In first place, I would like to mention Dr. Jesus Garcia Jimenez, considered the father of the boletology in Mexico. He is still working at the Tamaulipas University in the Northeast. Then Dr. Fortunato Garza Ocañas from University of Nuevo León, also in the Northeast, and the younger but prominent Dr. Roberto Garibay Origel is a recognized researcher from the UNAM, with whom we have worked in new species in Boletaceae and Lactarius deliciosus group. And the two younger and brilliant boletologists in Mexico are Dr. Olivia Ayala Vázquez at Colegio de Postgraduados in Mexico. She's finding many new records. It's amazing. It's amazing her work, including new genera for Boletaceae. And Ángel Saldívar, a brave guy from Jalisco, that is actually working in a call in Jalapa, Veracruz, with the Montoya Bandala Research Group. And here, I want to share with you some boletes pictures by Olivia Ayala, and also some edulis by Ángel Saldívar. They were very kind sharing with me these pictures, and they want to make their contribution to this presentation. For whom are not familiar with neotropical boletes, Dr. Garcia Jimenez was co-author with Rolf Singer in the book The Boletín of Mexico and Central America. That's why they consider the father or the grandpa for many mycologists in Mexico. And he's a very nice person. And I want to share some pictures that he sent me to present and share with you. The red cap edulis from North and Central Mexico. And for example, this one, the Rubriceps groups with a tiny stipe, it could be something different. The Boletus baripes group, we have the Fagicola, but I think that those in the extremes are different. The Atkinsoni, I have a doubt. The Barrosi is that's good. And that one from Tamaulipas could be a new species also. But the beautiful purplish boletes, Sucerulescens, Montebelloescens, that are provisional names. I hope that this year they can be published by Dr. Jimenez. And they have also Nobilis, Rexberis, and this orange, for me, it's a new species, and you will see in the Guatemalan boletes a similar species. Pictures now are a good tool to identify and recognize diversity in many countries. For example, that pictures by Alan Rockefeller for Boletus Pinophilus can give us an idea of the difference and similarities with North American and with European species. And I want to mention something that I could observe during my PhD studies. When I was studying our Pinophilus, I could realize that there are microscopical differences in the measure of spores, basidia, but especially at the Pilepelis hyphae. But in Europe, recently was found as a second lineage in the Nordic countries, whose microscopy is very similar to ours instead of the original and classic Boletus pinophilus. So we have many things to do in research. And this is the only Boletus that have been published as endemic in Mexico. And it was called Boletus bigacensis. It was found in the center of Mexico, and it seems to grow also in close to Veracruz. But genetically, it's close to Boletus occidentalis from Costa Rica, Boletus atkinsoni from the east, and Boletus barrosi from the west US. So it's incredible the relationships that we can find genetically in these mushrooms. Okay. I hope you are not going too bored. And I want to show you now the Boletus that we have in Central America. Okay. I just take some water. Okay. The Sierra de los Cuchumatanes in the northwest of the country is the highest and oldest remnant of the North American continent in Central America. This has become a refuge for ancient species in vegetables and mushrooms and habitat for some critical species. The highest west regions have diverse geological origins, while the Cuchumatanes is calcareous by sedimentary soil from the Carboniferous. Those at the southwest are volcanic. However, both have similar vegetation and fungi. But the most interesting thing is that both places, Cuchumatanes and volcanic chain, they have West North American mushrooms with that origin, not only from the east, as it has been stated from Central America. That's very important, and it's gonna change many things about the distribution and origin of the mushrooms in Central America. Those volcanoes, Tajumulco and Tacaná, are the highest in the country. They reach around 4,000 meters high, and Boletus edulis love to grow there. These edulis, the first one is in Cuchumatanes, in the center. That lady is another place a little far from Cuchumatanes, and the other one, the guy with the two mushrooms, are in a volcano in Tajumulco. So the size are quite similar in both places, but in Cuchumatanes are a little paler and sometimes and a little tiny. While in the volcanic chain, sometimes they can be very big, very big. Okay. In this picture, you can see the analysis that we have made with Dentinger, analyzing edulis from Guatemala and from the US, most of the West Coast. And you have a picture of me with different fruit bodies that I collected last year before going to San Francisco. And you can see different colors from purplish to yellow to orange and even some whitish, but all of them resulted in edulis using ITS. This is a picture of in Tajumulco volcano, 3,300 meters, and a picture of the mushrooms. And I was trying to isolate the tissue for culturing and doing isolations for DNA extractions. These are a good collection of edulis from Tajumulco before being sold in restaurants. The nice thing is that they allowed me to choose some for me for studies. And they are in our collection, and some of them were in my stomach also. Okay, to see some of these the mushrooms that we have in Guatemala, we have Boletus separans in Cuchumatanes. If you go to the 2,000 meters, volcanoes are the most frequent landscape to see due to its altitude. But vegetation changes with more pine and oaks forest. And obviously, mushrooms are there. And cloud forests are more frequent up to over to 2,000 meters high. In the forest that I showed you before, I found this species. When it was analyzed genetically, it resulted a new species. But when I made a comparison with the mushroom by Jesus Garcia, I found that they are pretty similar. But we have to compare the DNA. Guatemala City is 1,500 meters high. In this place, we have 5 local pines and at least 6 oak species. That permits us to have many boletes around the capital. For example, this species that I was sure that it was Boletus variipes, it is not. It resulted a new species. Variipes barfagicola. This is the right name for at least for this species in the meantime. But we have found that there are 2 different genetic species in Guatemala. One related to Central America and the other one to North America. So Boletus is very rich in species, and speciation seems to be higher to the neotropics. In this picture, you can see how those in the US fixed with one of Guatemala, and those with other position. I think this is from North America also, but they are different. Okay. This beautiful bolete also resulted in a new species, and it grows very close to Guatemala City port. But this area is an ancient part of North America, and is linked with the east of Sierra de las Minas, where there grows a quite similar species, but that grows bigger. I really would like to say, for me, it's easy to describe and recognize all the Guatemalan species in Boletus, but no, it is very complicated because in Guatemala, Boletus tends to be quite similar. So it's very difficult to separate them by macroscopical and even by microscopical features. The only thing that I recommend to differentiate the similar species by not by molecular tools is microscopy, and especially the size of spores, basidia, and the ornamentation of the ivy of Pilipellis, because there is a group that lacks ornamentation and other that have it with very dense incrustations in the ivy, but others are very scarce. Okay, we thought that it could be Boletus nobilis due to the size, the shape of the stem, but not. It is a different species. This beautiful and big and delicious Boletus, we thought that could be Bariipes also, and not. It's a new species, and it grows 2,200 meters at the east of Guatemala City. This this funny bolete. When I saw it, I thought, what is that? Gastroboletus, a new species, but no, maybe it was a malformation of that Greek body. But you can think, and maybe we can find some surprises with these mushrooms. But I want to show you that even boletes can make these ugly and strange forms. And this is the first one, the first Boletus species described for Guatemala. It was described in 2000 by Simonini and this server. It is called Boletus luteolo-incrustatus due to the yellow pigments that are around in the ivy of the pilipellis. Sometimes it becomes purplish when you touch it at the cap, but rare in this type. And you can note how fine can be the reticulation at the apex of this type. It only grows with oaks in central Guatemala. And the boletus that were called Santocomium, Separa, and Senafine and related species, the first one was found in close to Guatemala City, but the rest now has been found at the east. And I think that Santocomium could be more frequent in the east coast of the US. All markets in central Guatemala sell Boletus species, but there is something funny, because if you want to buy mushrooms, you can realize that boletes are some of the cheapest mushrooms. I don't know why, but maybe I can see that Mayan people prefer the Lactarius, the Amanitas, sometimes the Ramarias, or even the Tromelas, instead of the flavor of the boletes. Maybe because some boletes or boletes get quickly full of worms. And remember that the season for mushrooms in Guatemala, it starts from June to October. But heat and humidity is quite different from the US. So with high humidity of 90% and 25 to 28 or 30 degrees Celsius degrees, so it's the paradise, not also for us, but also for worms. Okay. A good news, especially for us in Guatemala and the people in the neotropics, is that each volcano, at least in Guatemala, have resulted as islands with particular species. So in every volcano, we can find different species, and very few are shared. So it's incredible. If we go to the east in the driest zone, we haven't found any Boletus sensu stricto, but only Phlebopus, and given mushrooms. But if we go up, for example, at Sierra de las Minas, that is the most biodiverse ecosystem in the country, the order Boletalis is especially abundant and with many cryptic species, and you can find also Caribbean species there. Okay, there are pictures of the ecosystems that we can see in Sierra de las Minas and around 150 kilometers long. And I want to share with you the most amazing species in bolete that I have found last year and maybe in my whole life. And it's this. I think that it could belong to Boletus because this form of the stem, white, it doesn't change of color, but as you can see, the color of the hymenophore is completely orange since the beginning. I found one young fruit body, and it was a little yellowish, but at the next day, it became orangish. And later, it was totally orange. But I don't want to mention more things, but you will, I promise to mention in another presentation if you want to invite me again. Okay, this is another new species that we found in Sierra de las Minas. I thought that it could be an edulis, but no, it is a different species. That's what we call Boletus neopinophilus. That is similar to Boletus modie of Nevada, the one that I mentioned you that it was like the Nessie. But this mushroom is not easy to find, as in the US. It can grow with pines in mixed forest with oaks, only in few patches in the west, but it is more common in Sierra de las Minas. But something that distinguishes this species is the flavor. While in the US, it is a little mild or a little garlic or almond, in Guatemala and Honduras, it has a strong flavor of garlic. So it's quite different. And it is delicious. But the only problem is with worms, that they also love this species. Okay, we have Boletus pseudopinophilus also in Sierra de las Minas, but in the lower parts with pines. And maybe we can have Boletus occidentalis in the east zone in Sierra de las Minas. When we were doing some analysis, we realized that there were only one sample with 98% of similarity. But we need to make more comparisons using another markers, molecular markers, to confirm the identity. But if this is an occidentalis, so we can confirm the plasticity in the species to change color and the grade of reticulation at this type. And this is the first record of Alloboletus in Latin America. For me, I was amazed because I knew that it was a very old genus that were in, I think in Australia. But then Ticker said that he has found in the US, but there was no record from Mexico. And of course, people never think about mushrooms in Guatemala. but we have it. And why we have it? Because of the ancient history of Guatemala. Okay, and if we go to Honduras, we can find at least 7 or 8 species, but maybe more. But the problem is that in Honduras, they lack mycologists specialized on boletes. I only know 2 persons that dedicate time to mycology, but they need more help. And I prepared this map for you to make it shorter and to conclude my presentation, where you can see how it diminishes the amount of species when you go down to the south. So, while in Guatemala we can have at least another 15 species, Honduras can have 8, El Salvador has a little because it's more tropical. Honduras, that have a long territory full of oaks and old and ancient territory. Nicaragua with the pines have 1 species. Costa Rica has 1, and you are the first to know that Colombia has 2 Boletus species. One that was found last year and photographed by Daniel Winkler, this picture. And that Boletus affine that I found it in Naturalist. So it is not published, but it's necessary to make more research. But I think that the Boletus can extend maybe only to Colombia. This is the last portion of natural distribution of Boletus in the continent from the north to the south, because oaks in its natural distribution ends in Colombia, and pines finished in Nicaragua. So the rest are other trees, as Notophagus, Balanophagus, and other tree species more related to African or pan-tropical environments. And so, my invitation is for you to come when you want, so you can do a nice staying, collecting mushrooms and enjoying different landscapes, some as beautiful as those that you have in San Francisco Bay, and obviously with a different culture. And I stop here because the time is late, and I want to thank you for the invitation and the interest that you did for me. Okay, and I want to stop it. Okay, the video. No.
Well, thank you very much, Roberto. This is a wonderful
thank you very much.
presentation. Yeah, do you have time to answer a few questions? If people have questions?
I will need Enrique to to respond, maybe to answer.
I think Enrique is still here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So
thank
do
you.
you have any
Thank
questions?
you.
Hi, Enrique.
Hello.
Does
Muchas
anyone
gracias.
have questions?
I have a question. So, do you think that that Boletus edulis will be split into more species than it is right now?
No, No,
No.
no, no, no. No, I think not. For what we have been studying, Edulis is the same species around the world.
Wow.
The comparison with European, Asian, and in American, it is the same species. But the important thing to keep in mind is that Edulis and maybe many mushrooms is that they have a big plasticity to change the phenotypical features as the color of the cap, the size, some morphology of the stem, and the flavor. The flavor is also related to the soil. For example, why some bolets of the same species are flavorful while others are mild, despite being the same species? So the answer that we thought is the terrain, so the soil. Because of the soil, there are many substances that go into the mushroom. Remember that mushrooms are like a sponge, no? They absorb everything that is in the soil. So flavors can be part of it. And we have to remember also the variability and the response of the answer, maybe the answer of the genetic of a species. Huh? By epigenetic, they can react and produce another substance despite being the same species.
Okay, thank you. And I have one correction.
Yeah.
You have my picture there for Mike Wood. My name's J.R. Blair. Yeah, so we have to fix that in your next presentation.
So I didn't get in which picture?
So the picture of Mike Wood.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. I'll take the credit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mara, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Roberto, for your presentation. It wasn't clear to me when you said that the further down that you got across the continent, the less the amount of Boletus. Is it because they haven't been discovered and there's very few people identifying them, or is it because objectively the conditions change and you just find less?
Say about Edulis?
Yes, yes, the Boletus.
Okay, Enrique, can you help me with that, please? Because I made a confusion.
You're muted, Enrique. No, there you go.
Okay. Mar, can you repeat that for me real quick?
Sorry, Matt.
No problem. Just before you finish your presentation, you showed a slide that showed that when you move across the continent from the US, then going to Central America, then finishing in Colombia, the amount of Boletus that you can identify decreases, or at least that was my takeaway. And I wanted to understand if it's because there's less people identifying them, or if it's objectively the fact that there's less species the further south that you get.
Okay, I will try to answer to this. In Central America, there are few mycologists. In fact, in Guatemala, for example, we are only 3 people dedicated for the research of mushrooms. 3. And imagine. Costa Rica, for example, has more mycologists dedicated to this field. However, they have 1 species reported. Nicaragua, they have two mycologists, but there are no reports of Boletus in Nicaragua. And I found the pictures in Naturalist. So it's something that belongs to young people that are helping us to know what is happening in our countries because of the lack of scientifics that are working on research in these mushrooms. But we have to recognize also that that Boletus is a symbiont genus, a mycorrhizal symbiont. So if we lack the original and natural symbionts that are pines or oaks, they cannot live with other trees. For example, with leguminosae, we haven't found any Boletus with leguminosae. But we can see the contrary in Europe or in Spain or Italy, where Boletus edulis is associated with Acistaceae. So it's strange, no? But I haven't found any bolete with the small plants in the country. And I have been traveled in the whole country from the highest altitude and the lowest in different ecosystems and nothing. For that, I am saying that Guatemala is very rich because of its composition from its natural history, from North American history, from West and East Coast, and then for the geography that helps to keep or kept different species. Honduras could be the same, but has lower altitudes. So it can how to say that, significant significate that they could have less species than in Guatemala because of the geographical and the richer diversity in pines, oaks, firs, and more symbiotic plants. El Salvador, due to its territory, it is more tropical and more to the beach. It's more dedicated to neotropical plants, and they have only pines and trees in the upper part that belonged to the Chortí blocks. In Nicaragua, is very tropical, but they only have pines and I think that 4 oak trees in the central part and to the Caribbean. But they have had very few studies on Boletus. And Costa Rica, they have, if I'm not wrong, 2 or 3 species of oaks. Oleoides, that is tropical, and I don't know what else more. And they don't have natural pines because pines ends in Nicaragua. So the symbionts ends, so there are less. And in Colombia, the 2 species that were found there, they grow with Quercus humboldti, an endemic species. But imagine, they were found until last year, in 2023. It's amazing. Despite having many mycologists in Colombia. That's nice. That's encouraging to continue the research. I think that is my point of view.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Well, I have a quick one, Roberto.
Tell me.
You mentioned a mushroom that can be confused with Boletus rexvirus. What was that?
With Boletus rexvirus? But rexvirus remain as a Rex Beris species. But how to differentiate it? I think by the habitat. So it's a West Coast species that maybe is also present in Mexico, but to the Sierra Madre Occidental. And who knows? Maybe it could migrate also to the east. We don't know. I am not Mexican. I have not been collecting there, but it could be. It could be. And if Edulis is present in Guatemala and it grows also in high altitudes, up from 2,000 to 3,000 meters high, and our Edulis are, as you see, from orange to purple. But maybe you can see, it's quite similar to Rex Beris and maybe to Claviceps. But our Edulis are Edulis sensu stricto. It's not different with, there is difference with Rex Beris. The only thing that they share is the big size.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. Anybody else have a question or a comment?
Hey, I have a question.
Go ahead.
It's an interesting presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks to you.
I'm wondering, you mentioned that we're seeing a distribution of the same mushrooms from the west coast of North America in Mexico and from the east coast of North America, further in Central America.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why we're seeing that distribution and not mushrooms from the west coast further into further south. Does that make sense?
Why are not many mushrooms from the west coast to South America?
Yeah, or I guess just why are we seeing that distribution?
Yeah, I think that because of the natural history. Remember that the origin of Central America, when we have two ends, the Mayan block and the Chortiz blocks. The Chortiz blocks join and fix here, and they remain as the last portion of the North American continent. But when the different climate changes during the Cretaceous to the Cenozoic and more, many climate changes were happening and many geological facts, eruptions, and many things, no? So the oldest genus and species that came from the West remain and disappear with these geological and environmental changes. But the mushrooms that came from the East, they came later. And that's maybe the right answer. And they could go to the South when the Central American Isthmus was formed. So it happened very late because we have only the North Central American part millions years before the formation of the isthmus with Costa Rica and Panama. So they are very late. That's why the species from the east pass through Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and they go to Costa Rica, or maybe through the Caribbean and they go to Costa Rica, Panama, and Colombia.
That's interesting. Thank you. Yeah, like thinking
Right.
about how the continents moved.
Yes, there are very few studies. I think that only Roy Halling is the one that have worked on this issue. And I am trying to understand and try to amplify and to make more reports and in this field. I have proposed in a paper that Guatemala has two mycological areas. And that's nice because despite being a very small country, we have well divided areas. One that contains the west and some of the east, and the east that contains more of the north of the east coast species, with part of Caribbean species also. But the rest are more eastern related species. That's it.
Thank you.